Hey, everybody, and welcome to our next CEO Leadership Lessons. I'm Jason Nazar, the co-founder and CEO of Comparably. Really happy and really excited to have Ben Chestnut, the founder and CEO of Mailchimp, with us. Hey, Ben.
How's it going, Jason?
For those of you joining us for the first time, thank you. For those of you coming back for so many times, thank you extra as well. This is a series that we do in combination with entrepreneur.com and Comparably, where we have these really incredible if I knew then conversations with amazing leaders and CEOs talking about their life lessons, their professional lessons. And of all the folks that I've been looking forward to talking to, Ben, you've been at the top of the list. I have used your product for a decade. I have followed you. We've got a little bit of a chance to interact. And when I think of the CEO that I continue wanting to be, you're really somebody that I try to model in the business that I try to build too. And so for those of you that don't know, Comparably is a platform or an employee review platform. We help make companies more transparent. You can see amazing scores about Mailchimp on there and how they are building a great company culture. So we'll talk about that today. Lots of different things. I think everyone on here, Ben, is going to be familiar and, like me, absolutely love Mailchimp. But in your own words, would love to have you explain, how you talk about the business today.
Well, first of all, thank you for being a customer. Using Mailchimp for 10 years is something else. It kind of makes me feel great, but it also makes me worried. Like, you've seen the ups and downs. You've seen you've seen all the mistakes we've made. So we should get together after this, and you should give me some tips. What needs improvement in your opinion. If I were to describe Mailchimp, I think first, we've been around for 20 years, so I'd first have to explain to people we are not what we used to be. So I always have to have a disclaimer. You probably remember us as an email newsletter tool. We've now turned into a platform that helps small businesses start and grow their businesses. So you can do anything from buying a domain name, setting up a site, setting up a store, all the way to setting up your e-commerce marketing automation.
That's what's been so impressive for me to see. So, the company I had before Comparably, I started a company, DocStock, and it grew to one of the largest small business content sites. We sold it to Intuit in 2013. We had 50 million registered users when we sold the company. And it is really hard running a small business. And I don't think people necessarily understand the amount of things that folks have to deal with, from getting customers to doing operations. You're doing everything. And to see the platform that you've become and all the different areas that you're helping folks, and really you're getting to the heart of what every small business owner is trying to do, which is to be seen by more people, to get more customers, to get their products and service out to more folks. It's really incredible to see what your business has evolved into. The thing that has always struck me about Mailchimp is, I think the two things that you've nailed in your product experience is that it's intuitive and it's frictionless. And especially for small business owners that didn't necessarily grow up with technology as their de facto, like, it's pretty incredible how easy it is you make it for folks to share what they're doing with the world. How have you thought about that evolution from where you started to where you are today?
Thanks for saying it's so easy and intuitive. When we think about building for small businesses, I always thought, entrepreneurs, I was an entrepreneur, they have a story to tell. They've got some cool idea for their brand. Probably the business that they're doing is something that's already been done before a million times, but their take on it is unique, darn it. They have their vision, their story to tell. And when they log in, I don't want them to have to worry about the interface or how to make it work. I just want them to go in and tell their story. They probably have a picture to upload. They have some story to write. I just want to help them just get in and get it out. So that's always kind of been the way that I've thought about Mailchimp. And I also, like you said, it's really hard to run your business. It's frustrating, sometimes infuriating. Sometimes you feel like you're not getting anywhere. Sometimes you just sort of like go back home and you have to tell your spouse, like, I don't know, this might've been a mistake. And so we also know that about small businesses. And so when they log into Mailchimp, we thought, why not make it a little bit more delightful for them? And over the years, on that point, we've slowly kind of progressively taken away some of we used to have our mascot cracking jokes all the time, little animations. You might have, if you've been using us 10 years, you would have remembered a lot of those. But as our user base started to go global, and as people started to use smaller and smaller devices, we've had to take away some of those delightful, superfluous things. And we've had small businesses come in and say, "What happened? Why did you take it away? That was my only joy." So to your point, it is kind of a joyless thing in the early years, at least. And we're just trying to make it a little bit, less dismal.
Yeah. I think you nailed the brand from day one. We'll come back to that in a moment. One of the things I'm curious to get your take on, one of my favorite movies all time, Field of Dreams. But there's a line in there that I think is one of the biggest traps for entrepreneurs, which is, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
And probably like you, I do a lot of angel investing. I sit on the board of a lot of tech companies. And the consistent theme I see, especially with newer entrepreneurs, is overestimating demand. We all get so excited about what we're going to build. We think when we do it, everyone's going to start magically using it. And you're getting to the heart of actually solving that problem. I'm curious to get your take on that, and how do you try to talk and coach, entrepreneurs and CEOs around that demand generation? Because I think so many of us overestimate how easy it's going to be to get those customers and users.
Yeah. Whenever I talk to entrepreneurs and I look at their marketing, what I notice is they're usually good at one thing, one way of communicating. For me, I was really good at writing. And lucky that I fell into blogging. And that's the thing that I just kept doing. That was how I marketed Mailchimp. My co-founder, Dan, he's a much more visual person when he communicates. He takes pictures and stuff. So if Instagram existed 20 years ago, I'm sure he would have used Instagram all the time. So I usually try to tell founders, find that one communication style that you're really good at, and then find that channel that will inspire you to use it more and pick up the cadence. So I'm always like the 3 C's. It's like, what's the channel? What's your communication style? What's the channel that's going to give you the highest cadence? But you need to be telling your story, and you need to be telling people how different your brand is than all the others. And you just have to keep talking about yourself. You start with that one channel, and what we see as entrepreneurs, if they kind of succeed through the first, 2 to 5 years, if they actually survive, which most don't, right? But if they survive past that, you see them hiring on staff, and they take on all of the other channels. Right. So when I started to hire people at like year 7, I finally started to grow our staff. Like they said, yeah, your blog is good. It's solid. We're not going to do that anymore, but we're going to experiment with this new thing called Twitter. We're going to try Facebook. We're going to try all of these other ways of marketing too. So, but it always usually it starts with that one channel that the founder is just really good at.
There's so many things unique about your story, and we're going to go back to the beginning of it in just a moment, but just a couple things that stand out. You didn't start this company in Silicon Valley. You're based out of Atlanta.
Right.
You've been with the business, like this has been 20 years you've been doing that. That's not typical, right? And I often think of like 2020 as the year that so many high profile CEOs step down or away from their companies, let other people run them. And you didn't raise a massive amount of venture capital early on.
Wait, you can do that? You can step down? That's allowed? Wait.
How do you think about just how you've gone against the grain in all these traditional ways of building a big technology company? I mean, I think there's so many companies that would love to have the brand and the loyal customers and the product adoption and the financial metrics. I think you all publicly published in 2019, you did 700 million in revenue. You have 1,000 employees. This is an incredible business you built, and it feels like you're just still scratching the surface of its potential. What do you think it was that you've gone against the grain and done things very differently than a lot of like traditional tech companies and how they've come up to be?
A couple of things. I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't acknowledge lucky timing. We started at a time when SaaS was kind of new, and we had a SaaS offering right off the bat, and it was a pretty darn good one for a channel that was neglected for a very long time, email marketing. And the timing was right because the economy was horrible. And so everybody needed a cheap marketing channel, right? A very affordable one. So we were at the right place at the right time. So that was really good timing for us. And then I think we just had a extreme customer focus. When I look back, I don't know, that we did anything genius. It's just that our internal motto is listen hard, change fast. We think that's good business advice, universal. We think it's just great life advice too. If everybody listened hard and changed fast, the world would be a better place, I think. We just really kept trying to listen to customers and what their needs were. Even as we switched over the years, we evolved from just an email newsletter tool to this multi-channel platform. That was not like a spark of inspiration for me and my co-founder. That was from flying all over the country and talking to customers and finding out like, what's your next move? What do you need for Mailchimp? We would ask them like, what's the brand promise of Mailchimp? We would try to make them think differently about us. And then when they say, when I think about your brand, you're marketing, you're all of marketing. You're not just email marketing. You've got to help us, make it all, sprinkle the Mailchimp magic on all of the different channels and make it all easy. That's what gave us that idea. That came from talking to a customer in Dayton, Ohio. So, I mean, it wasn't Silicon Valley. We were just always talking and listening to all of our customers. Sometimes that can be overwhelming. But, constantly listening and trying to connect the dots, I think helped us.
There's this interesting tension, and I'm curious to get your advice here, which is, I think the most successful, product leaders are obsessive about listening to their customers and putting their feedback in.
Yeah.
I think there's also a pretty well-established school of thought now too, that sometimes people will tell you things that they want, but they don't necessarily always know, or they'll give you lots of different areas to follow. And sometimes you have to have a person on your team that has that product visionary that puts in front of folks, right? And obviously Mark Zuckerberg's famous for this. When he put in the news feed, people were up in arms about it. And now it's one of the most used global products of all time. How do you think about that natural tension of, when you need to be able to listen to your customers and adopt that immediate product feedback versus when kind of to turn that off and to put something in front of a customer that they may not think that they want?
I would always refer to that as sort of crossing my eyes. I would kind of cross my eyes and blur. So really you have to imagine like an inbox full of 1,000 requests from customers, because that's literally what we always had at Mailchimp. We had like an open door kind of policy. Everyone would email us their ideas. And, in the early days, it was only several thousand customers we had, but that's enough to overwhelm 3 people in a rented office space. We would look at the inbox and you'd see all of these, and you just sort of have to blur it a little bit and connect the dots and find the trends. But that said, I mean, I remember those early years, it was too much advice. It really was too much. And we were trying to find the trends. And sometimes you'd get 3 or 4 bits of emails from really high value customers, but they might not be the ones you want to be building for. Because sometimes the really high value ones, they pay you a lot of money one year and then they're gone the very next year, or that staffer gets fired or moves to a new job. You just lost that client. And so you have to have some kind of instinct over time to understand, like, here are the trends that I'm seeing in between. This is what we build for, because if we build for this, it's going to solve the problems of millions of people, not just a small handful of really big customers. I think we were helped because, we ran a design agency for a few years during the .com days. And then, 9/11 came and just wiped out our entire client base just in one swoop. And we learned, like, wow, you really want to diversify your customer base. So we were really, really excited about the possibility of SaaS and like having thousands. We couldn't dream of having millions like we do now, but just thousands of small businesses using us and paying small amounts instead of relying on those handful of big giant accounts. So you just get all of this input, and you kind of have to what we learned over time was stop looking at the industry that those small businesses were in, and really look at the sort of the evolution of a small business. When they're really, really small, we created a persona for the entrepreneur. we hung posters of this persona around the office. And then we learned that eventually they reach that 5-year mark and they hire another person to do their marketing. And that person comes in, their demands go sky high. So we had another persona. We gave them all names and we hung them all around the office. And then those were the people that we started to design for the life stage of the client rather than the industry that they were in. That worked for us, but it does seem to be the trend that a lot of businesses go through. They sort of chase the wrong customer for the first couple of years, and then they realize this is the real market. Right?
Yeah. Well, a lot of folks know I'm a huge comic book fan.
Huh?
I spend my weekends with my 3-year-old son watching Justice League and Avengers cartoons, and so I'm indoctrinating him. And so origin stories are a big deal for me, and you have an incredible one. And your mom gave you this entrepreneurial model. Where did you feel like from a young age that you were going to do something entrepreneurial and chart your own path? Like where did that ambition or drive or vision come from to become the person you have today?
I think my mother, she ran a hair salon in the kitchen. So I did see her as my entrepreneurial role model. She didn't really call herself an entrepreneur. We didn't really talk about it as entrepreneurialism or even a small business. We just called it making ends meet.
Mm-hmm.
It was her talent. And so I just kind of like saw entrepreneurialism as just breathing. It's just a thing you do in life. It was sort of a service business, the way that she ran things, right? Clientele around the neighborhood just came into our kitchen and everything. Learned a lot about customer service watching that. My father was in the military and he dreamed a lot about starting a business himself, but he was always, he was in the military and he had bills to pay. He had family to support and a big extended family to support and us, the children. So he never really could make that break and become an entrepreneur. And I used to listen to him on our long drives and he would talk about, I could start a business this way, or we could start a business that way. And it was fun kind of brainstorming with him, all of these different kinds of businesses we could start someday. But, it never materialized. But I think what that did was it made me want to do that. Kind of like finish the story or finish what we started. So that was sort of like the thing, I think, when it was 2000, we all got laid off, this .com where I was working. I was offered a job back at corporate. It was a really good company. They were going to take us all back in and help us out. But I remembered all of those stories, all of those ideas that I brainstormed with my dad. And I just thought, if I don't try to be an entrepreneur, if I don't try to start my own thing, I probably never will. I'll get this cushy job. It'll be probably very well paying and I'll just be kind of happy for the rest of my life there, but I'll regret it. I might regret it, like my dad. So let me try this. Let me try this out. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. I have this, philosophy I talk about, which is to take the biggest amount of risk that you can, especially in your 20s, and that you get 3 bats at plate. If you just think of your 20s in like 3-year increments, like go do the biggest, most wild, riskiest thing you could do and do it 3 times. And, if you make a bet on yourself, something amazing is going to happen from it. I am curious to dig into that decision because there are a lot of people that want to chart their own path, that want to start something of their own. But when they're faced with the decision of, well, option A is income and security and stability, and let's be honest, like a little bit of social status, although maybe that's changed now. There's more social status to be an entrepreneur, right? Versus option B, which is the unknown and risk and going into debt and, charting a path. Like, what, in addition to your experiences with your mom and your dad, made you feel comfortable at that juncture to turn down money, to turn down stability, and to say, hey, I'm going to make a bet on myself? It wasn't as if you had started a tech company before. I don't think you're a software engineer by background or training.
Right.
So what was it that gave you that confidence to make that leap?
Well, I think by that time I had picked up a book. I think it was called Regrets of the Dying. This is going to get morbid. But it was a home care nurse who kind of wrote everything she had learned taking care of people who were on their deathbeds. And the common themes were I lived my life for someone else,
Mm.
whether it be another person or another company or something. So I knew that was regret is sort of a common theme for me. Like I really want to avoid regret. And it says, and that's kind of my motivation to take the leap and try new things or do something that's scary, because you do not want to be on that deathbed saying, I coulda, woulda, shoulda. So that was one thing that said, I got to go do this, or I never will try again. But also I talk about this, like it wasn't bravado or courage. I also happened to have a wife. I married my high school sweetheart. By then we were married, and she was a nurse. She made good money. She was a night shift nurse. So she was doing quite well. That was our safety net. She had a health insurance plan for us. And so that really helped me kind of take that leap. It wasn't the same for my co-founder. He was single, so he didn't quite have that safety net. So it was he's the brave one, you know. I'm glad that he went on that journey with me, because it was really risky for him when I look back at that.
What was most surprising in that first year or two? Like, what are the things that you didn't know that you didn't know, and what do you find are common patterns and themes as as you angel invest in a company, or as you see entrepreneurs in their first year or two? What are the big mistakes that you're seeing people make that that you had to live through and that you consistently see?
It's nothing but mistakes, by the way, and I think that's a kind of a good thing, as long as they're not too expensive or deadly for the business. But like, you're chasing. I remember feeling like there's a playbook out there somewhere. If I could just find the playbook, or
Mhm.
find the mentor, or find the person who just has the answer for me, who can like flip the switch and the light bulb will come on in my head, and then I'll know all the answers. There's no playbook. To become a successful business, you actually have to do something for which there is no playbook, because that'll result in something someone's never seen before, like a marketing SaaS app with a chimpanzee that has a hat. Like no one's seen that before. And that helped us, right? So you're constantly looking for this playbook, but there is no playbook. Stop chasing after it. You're not supposed to know what you're doing because it's something new. And then like the other simple mistake, when I mentor or talk to any kind of startup founder, it's almost embarrassingly simple. But I had the same problem myself, and one of my early mentors fixed it, and it's really simple. So I would talk about trying to move the needle, trying to like hit a growth curve, trying to get out there, escape velocity, And he said, well, what's working? And I said, well, I did this one thing and we got like 100 customers when we did that. And he said, well, did you do it again? And I said, no, I got busy with this other stuff. And he said, well, do it again. And then I did it again. And then we met for lunch again, like a month later. And I said, that worked. And he said, did you do it again? And then he would do that, like, do it again and again until customers stopped buying it. And so that kind of helped us scale our marketing. Like, oh, we're supposed to do what works and repeat. And then you start thinking about, oh, who can I hire to do that for me while I'm sleeping? It's this sort of silly thing. And I've used that on entrepreneurs that I've met. And it's surprising how many of them will say, I did this thing. Oh my God, it's the most successful thing I've ever done. And I just said, did you do it again? And they almost always say, no, I didn't. Oh, I didn't think about that. Because they're chasing the novel. They want to do something new again. Say, no, you can do something boring and just repeat it. Um,
One of the angel investors in DocStock was a guy named Matt Coffins, who started Lower My Bills, and he had sold the company for a great number in the early 2000s. And he gave me almost the exact same advice. He framed it a little differently. He said, it's not that most startup founders don't find things that are working. It's that they do and they gloss over them, and they go deep into enough and they don't exploit enough the opportunities that they have found, because they're always looking for that next thing. And I just think that's such a thoughtful philosophy to explain, Ben, which is when you find something that's working, go as deep and as far and as fast into how much that can turn into.
yeah.
Because I think a lot of us feel like, oh, we're struggling, we haven't found something that's working, where a lot of times we do have the kernel of it, but we just don't turn it into something big enough.
Do you think we're just constantly chasing after the new? Like we want the big idea or another new idea? Is it sort of like that entrepreneurial spirit?
I think it's a little bit that. And also I think people feel like they see success from the outside, and so they expect it to be easy and instant. But like you've gone through, right? I'm sure you've used this phrase, like you're a 20-year overnight success, right? Like when something's working, it's not necessarily that it worked. Like when someone uses Mailchimp and they start using you to do, let's say, direct mail or social media marketing, it's not as if the first campaign that they ever send is going to have this 10x return, right? But if they do it one time and they're better than break even and they've got a little bit of margin, then it's like, okay, well, maybe now I need to go back and I need to improve my copy. I need to improve my messaging. I need to fix the targeting. And you just keep iterating and iterating. I think what happens is folks feel like if it doesn't be a big, huge success right away, then there's something else out there that's going to instantly work. But that's rarely how big successes happen. They happen because you keep peeling that layer of the onion over and over and over, and you get to this magical thing at the end.
I know a founder. I won't name names. I'll keep their identity secret, but they are super duper creative and they want to chase the new ideas. And the advice we give them is like, focus. You've got a great product. Just focus. And then the pandemic hit. And he had one of his creative ideas to pivot, and he's seen the most success he's ever seen in like 10 years because he's just simply made like a quick little, it was a genius pivot that he did. Mm-hmm. He just so happened to have all the parts around, and he just, in no time. And, I was like, well, good thing he kept that creative spark in him. So I guess it's a balance, isn't it? You have to keep that innovation going, but also maybe you have to hire some people to just keep the discipline and the focus of some of those maybe more menial tasks or more analytical tasks.
What are the common traits that you see in really successful folks? So as you've invested in companies, as you've hired senior executives, what do you pattern match as, if someone has X, if they have these qualities, if they have these characteristics, it's an indicator to you that they're going to be really successful?
A little bit of quirkiness. I'm talking to one now. He's really good, and he used to be an engineer at Mailchimp, and everyone said he was amazing. Little quirky though. And that's like, oh, let me invest in that. A little bit of quirkiness, some grit, some story that they can share, where you have to have confidence that they're just going to keep getting back up, because like we said, it's just nothing but mistakes over and over and over again. And usually you can kind of tell that there's something in them when you talk to them. You can kind of see that they're listening in a different way than most people do. They're much more curious. I think I get dismayed when I hear them talk a little bit more about the sales pitch or the deck that they're working on, or the genius of the product. I really love it when they say, the idea is this. I already have a couple people who are using it, and they taught me this, and we already modified it to do this. It's a sign that their feet are on the ground. They're walking around getting customers, signing them up and everything. That's usually a really, really great sign for me.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna do a time machine for a moment.
Yeah.
So if you could take a time machine back into your own 20s, and you were talking to the 20-year-old version of Ben, what advice would you give yourself and why?
20-year-old Ben?
Any part of your 20s. Yeah. Mid-20s.
Marry Teresa, hurry. Best thing that ever happened to you. Sometimes I wonder, should I lie to myself? You're dead in 5 years. Hurry. Speed up. I don't know. I think I might tell myself, you're not supposed to know, Ben, Because I just remember those years just wondering, what is the answer here?
Hmm.
And I was always stressed about really not having the right answer. And I think I would just tell myself, chill out, it'll work out in the end. And you're not supposed, it's supposed to be this hard.
Hmm. I love that.
Yeah,
Someone told me early on when I was 26, starting a venture back company, don't struggle with the struggle. And that helped me a lot.
that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Someone gave me the advice in my 20s that said, it's supposed to take a long time.
Hmm.
Nothing good ever happens fast. He told me something along those lines. And it calmed me down, I think, and it helped me focus.
All right. It's the same thing. You take the time machine into either your late 30s, early 40s, and what personal or professional advice are you giving yourself and why?
30s. I would say, start reading some leadership books now.
Hmm. Love that.
Because, running a tiny squad of people, a small startup is going to be very different from running a team of 100 and 1,000. So maybe learn about organizational behavior, something along those lines, not just sort of like the leadership books you get at the airport, but like, real stuff. Yeah. Maybe I'd tell them, dude, 2020 is gonna suck. Be ready.
Yeah. It seems like part of your philosophy is stoicism, right? It's become really popular again. And, Marcus Aurelius, way back in the day in Rome, popularized this idea that, by thinking about death, by thinking about when we're not here, it makes us have more clarity of the choices that we want to have. I bring this up to my wife sometimes, and I don't think she always likes my philosophy on this. But my take is that, if I treat it like next month I'm not here, it gives me more clarity on what's important and what I should really focus on, whether it's time with my family or what's most important for the business and all the people that are responsible to me there, and how I should spend my time. I'm curious to get your take on this. I feel like, so one of the things I recently wrote is like working smarter is not working less. It's working hard on the right things. And I feel like you must, especially you, like you've been at this business for when it was 2 of you to where it's 1,000 of you now. There's so many priorities at any given time that you're being pulled into. Like, how do you focus on the most important things? How do you stay disciplined to do those things that are going to move the needle the most and be the most important? Because you could get caught up in 101 things every single day.
Yeah, well, what I've learned over the years is you really need to know the goal. What is the end state that you want? And that's obvious. Everybody talks about that. Know the goal at the end, right? But I never stop there. I don't just write down the goals in like a notepad or something and then follow some strict calendar on it. I always go a step further and I say, what are the habits I need to achieve those goals? What are the habits I need to change to get there? And then I try to go that deep, and then I focus on those habits. I don't actually look at the goals. Sometimes I forget the goals. I get so focused on the habit change, the goals come. The goals eventually. I've hit every goal. This is going to sound arrogant. I've hit every goal that I've ever set in my life, but it's never by looking at the goals. My co-founder and I talk about it sometimes. I say it's almost like looking at the sun. You need the sun. We love the sun, but if you stare at it, it'll burn your eyes out. So like with our goals, like I try not to even think about them. I hire people to watch the goals now. They watch the goals, make sure that we're on deadline and everything. But for me, I just sort of think, well, the next level, the next place that the company needs to go, I actually need to behave this way. And the culture of the company needs to change and behave this way. I have to role model that. So how do I change in order to get us to that goal?
Do you have any top of mind growth hacks these days for either productivity? Like, what are the things that you do that help you be more efficient, that help you save time? What are those little tricks or growth hacks that you've picked up over the last couple of years that you use today?
I mean, having a great assistant, just a great executive assistant. Everyone says that, right? But it's like, it's great. And then get executive assistants for your other executives ASAP. hire really good ones who are pros. And then that just like really grows everything. I never really read any of the growth hacks or time management books, to be honest with you. I never enjoyed them. I never felt like they were for me. Um, I think because growing a small business, everything seems like it changed every couple of months. And any kind of pattern that I ever set never really stuck because I had to change. Um, Not a great answer, not a very satisfying answer, but I think all I ever did was get ready for change or really focus on adaptability and resilience. I think I've always tried to make sure that the culture of Mailchimp, like the number one thing is to me flexibility, adaptability. Because I tell people we are on a rock hurtling through space.
Mhm.
It's an ever expanding universe. Change. Everything is going to change. So, the whole culture of Mailchimp is like I said, our motto is listen hard, change fast. And so just adaptability and resilience is all I really focus on more than any kind of growth or time management hack.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because, you hire great leaders, hire really, really good leaders who know what they're doing, and they sort of like save you all the time that you need.
So to that point, obviously, there's a large number of companies that have come out and said our employees can work remotely indefinitely.
Yeah.
And Mark Benioff just came out and publicly said the 9 to 5 work week is dead. It's gone. You're helping, small businesses change the way that they work, be more flexible, be more adaptable. How are you thinking about this at Mailchimp? I'm assuming you already had, at least partly a distributed company. As you think about not just for your company, but for everyone, like what's the future of work going to look like for the next 5 years as far as how are people going to organize physically together? What are they going to do remotely? What's the right balance both for people in their personal lives, but also the right balance for companies to be productive and efficient? I'll tell you one of the things I'm struggling with, and I've always ran an office and companies where we're all together physically. That was just something that was important to me. It's kind of how I came up. I was old school about it. And COVID's opened my eyes a bit. We had a good year in 2020, all things considered. And we're hiring folks, distributed across the, country and probably the world soon. But there's still some roles I'm like, I want them in Los Angeles with us. I want to have the opportunity to be in person, to be together. And very candidly, I'd love to say in every case, I could just tell people, here are your goals and get them done. And wherever you want to work, do it. And I think for 60, 70, 80% of folks that I'll hire, that's true. And then for some folks, I just know if they're not in a structured environment, if they're not asked to be somewhere, it's not going to be as productive and we're not going to get as much stuff done. So I'm trying to figure out for myself what to do. And I think I'm just trying to figure out, like a lot of folks, what's work going to look like for the next 5 years? What's it going to become? And what's best for people in their individual lives? And what's going to be best for companies to continue to be productive and grow quickly and meet their goals?
We're all winging it right now, aren't we? I've sat in on so many conferences with top leaders and they talk about, oh, this is the future. Nobody knows. I have family that gets stationed in other countries. I ask the ones in China, what's it like? What's it like now? Is it back to normal? And they say, yeah, it's largely back to normal. So that kind of like is a data point for me. Like everyone goes right back to normal. Okay, well, that's a good sign. But then, definitely something has changed. Like people are very much used to working from home, and it's a good thing for a lot of people. So I know we're going to be a lot more flexible. We're talking about flex, some people want to stay in the office. Some people want to do predominantly home. Some people want all of both. We're also talking about that's just not going to be enough. Some people are going to say, I want to be in the office 2 days, but they're going to pick Monday, Tuesday. Some people are going to pick Thursday, Friday. That's not going to work. We actually have to have more strict rules and process around flex, right? So these days will be only camera meetings, whether you're at the office or at home. So it gets really complex, and we're scrambling to get all of that put in place. I think usually if Benioff says it, it's probably going to happen. He's pretty good. But I do think that I would tell people just have your eyes and ears wide open and be a little skeptical of everything. I think that what's happening is really you're just seeing not so much a predictor of what's going to happen. You're just seeing a lot of people moving because it's easier to work remote. And you're probably, our hypothesis, we're just going to need a lot more office space in more locations as landing pads for all of our remote workers. So we might not need gigantic HQ 1, 2, 3s. Maybe they're just more smaller spaces in much more cities. That's my hypothesis.
Yeah. What's something, and I know I'm probably going to have to pull this out of you because you're incredibly humble. What's something that you are really good at that you didn't necessarily expect or know you were going to be? Like as you look at where you're at as a leader, because, and I'm going to get to this in a moment, like the journey of just going from 2 people in the company to 1,000 is incredible. And to see that whole, process unfold. But, today for where you're at Mailchimp, what's something that you're really good at that you didn't know or expect to be this good at professionally?
Staying calm. Someone just told me you are remarkably Zen. Maybe it's that stoicism thing. My dad was a stoic, my mother was a Buddhist. Maybe that helped me. But I think that, as a leader of a growing business, when you're in the thousands, you're sort of like, it's not a village. You're not a village leader anymore. Now I'm sort of the mayor of a city is how I think about it. At any given point, something is broken in the city. Something is going wrong somewhere. You'll fix this neighborhood, something bad happens over there, and you're just never going to get it all working perfectly. And so you just have to stay calm. I think that's the consistent thing people tell me is you are remarkably calm and decently self-aware.
It feels like that was there from the beginning. I can't imagine. I mean, I feel like this is how you were.
Maybe
as an early adult.
I don't know. My wife might have a different opinion. I think that I'm not the most creative person. Like I don't think that I could, if you give me a blank canvas, I don't think I could come up with some master creation, but I think I'm decently good at getting a round table of creative people and synthesizing ideas, turning it into something. And I don't care if it's all designers or some engineers and designers and marketers. I think I can get the creativity out of people.
What's like, I always think like you have this Mailchimp, I know it's like a child to you. Like I know what it's like to give birth to a product and to live with it for so long. Like what's something in Mailchimp that you just love and you're so proud of and think so cool that maybe not that many people know about? Like if you could tell anybody like the secret amazing part of Mailchimp that they got to be using, that's going to help them a ton. Like what's that thing that you're just incredibly proud of?
Well, I mean, right now I'm incredibly proud of the journey builder. When you come into Mailchimp, you used to just send an email. Now you can assemble an entire journey of automated emails. It can send emails, it can time the next email. It can also send emails from your abandoned cart. You can send a postcard, and we're adding different channels to it as well, social, etc. So, I mean, it's just expanding from here. So that, to me, I'm most proud of that is because entrepreneurs just don't have time. They just don't have enough time in the day, and they need some force multiplier. And that's the most powerful thing inside of Mailchimp that frankly, a lot of people don't even know it's there. We need to do a better job of showing where it's at. But I mean, it's just a thing that can sit there and just generate returns for entrepreneurs while you're sleeping. So that just makes me really, really proud because it's helping all of those small businesses get that financial independence and freedom that they're looking for.
All right, so obviously we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about company culture. These are how your own employees are leaving feedback. So you can see your scores on Comparably are really amazing.
Yeah.
If you were if you came into a company and someone hired you to spend a week with an organization to help them build an amazing company culture, right? So some venture-backed company that's going to be the next big thing. Let's say, Clubhouse calls you. We want you to spend a week with us. We want to build a great company culture. We have 15 employees today. We're going to go to 500 pretty quickly. We want the culture that Mailchimp has. How do you think about building great company culture at that early stage? How do you think about maintaining and growing it at the stage you're at today? And for you, what are those core tenets? Like, what makes a great company culture?
People ask me that a lot, actually, and I say, be careful, because in the very early years, you might not want a culture because it might be the wrong culture. As they're learning what their business should be, getting closer to product market fit, they don't really know their strategy. They don't know the market. They don't know the product. Until they hit that, they should probably avoid a culture, setting a culture in stone. They should just focus on flexibility, work-life balance, whatever it takes to keep people happy, motivated, and working. But then once they really know their product market fit and how they're going to win and what their strategy is, then they should ask themselves, what kind of culture is it that we're going to need to stay competitive? And, that's going to involve giving people a sense of purpose, feeling like they're contributing to the community. But all of that stuff has to align. So I usually tell people, be very careful before you, if you see a company like Mailchimp that's 20 years old and has 1,000 people, you don't just start emulating that culture. The things we're doing now, that's not how we got here, And I think that I would probably work on the founders. I would watch the founders, ghost them, follow them, shadow them everywhere they go to see, how they behave. And I might, I would say the biggest advice I might tell them is like, the world is becoming increasingly diverse. The world is smaller. We're all connected. Cultures are going to be very, very diverse, and you have to be very deliberate about that and train your people how to have inclusive teams. That's probably the foundational thing is, and that's hard. That is not easy. You have to create a fostered environment of what do they call it? Cultural curiosity. You have to. This is like, I know this is, maybe you're expecting like a bullet point list of culture ideas, but no. You got to go deep. You got to go way down into behaviors, the way people behave on teams and how you want them to behave. That's hard stuff. It's like right in the, when you're thinking about culture, you should be thinking about like management training. What do you want to train your managers? How do you codify your culture so that, there's like a manual for management training? We thought about it as like, what would Mailchimp Academy be? That was the question that kicked off our culture. My co-founder, Dan, and I, we talked about, well, you hear about these, like McDonald's has, what is it? Burger College or something like that. Netflix has an academy. All the great brands and companies they have some kind of school. And then, so that's how we thought about it. And then our chief culture officer at the time, Marty Wolf, said, well, let me hire some organizational behavior experts at Emory University down the street. And they came in and codified our values, and the values kind of led to the culture. That was a big help for us. It wasn't like it just materialized out of the ethos or something like that. It was a real exercise for us, multi-year.
Mm-hmm. What are your go-to questions when you're interviewing folks? And the reason I ask is, part of my philosophy is I feel like culture is primarily who you hire. You can do all these things after the fact to try to build a great company culture, but to me, it's who is on that team. And I'm always just so curious to know how other leaders are screening candidates, and what are the questions that you use to really help identify, is this somebody I want to have on my team, or is this somebody that may not be the right fit?
First, I dream, I look into the future, and what are the goals? And like I said, I work backwards. What are the behaviors that are going to get me there? And then I look for whether or not the leader has those behaviors and that experience. And that there is no set kind of rules that I have for those leaders, because those requirements and the behaviors that I need change as the organization grows. So it's completely situational at any given time. We might need to be, there's an era at Mailchimp where we were just very qualitative, not quantitative at all. We were just going with our instinct and just, hey, let's just be really creative.
Mm-hmm.
And then you find, hey, there are lots of duds in our creativity too. We need, maybe we need a few quants. So I might look for leaders who exhibit those kinds of traits and behaviors. And then over time, you might say, with an organization this large and people distributed everywhere, maybe you need somebody who's like really good at teaming and organizational leadership, of very, very large scale teams. I don't know that there's any real set rules that I have. There is one little thing that I do. Like I try to take everyone to lunch if I can, or dinner. And I try to make it a really loud, crowded restaurant. And I just try to see if they can focus. And if you talk to somebody who, if someone drops a fork or something and they're talking to you and then they, look over at it, or I just feel like that's just a bad sign that they just cannot stick to a goal. They're not disciplined. They can't focus on the person and listen to the person in front of them. Maybe that's just more of a pet peeve. I don't know, but that is something that I tend to look for.
That's brilliant. Ben Chestnut's fork test.
The fork test.
Yeah.
I think I'm looking for whether or not they're a good listener, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, I have another trick that I do. I just act real dumb. So whatever it is, if they're, when I was interviewing my GC, whatever topic it is, legal or marketing or whatever, I asked them to tell me about what they know. And then I just say, well, golly, explain that one for me. I just sort of like, take on the persona of Gomer Pyle or something. And I just say, I don't understand that. Tell me. And I test to see if they can explain it in really simple words. I think it's a test to see if they truly understand it, and if they're humble enough to dumb their craft down to a simpleton like me. If we can, I argue with them, say, no, that's not going to work. No, I found this other thing. Why don't you do it this way? Like, that's not true. And if they get defensive, that's a bad sign. If they sort of get curious, then that means they want to learn something new, even though they're like at the peak, they're the top of their class. They know what they're doing. They're an expert. That's why they're interviewing with me, but they're still curious to learn. And maybe your approach is, maybe your, backwards idea, Ben, might actually be something. That's usually a good sign too.
Who's someone that you've hired that you've learned a lot from? And what did you learn from them?
Oh my gosh, everybody. That's all I ever do is just hire people smarter and better than me. Where do I even begin? First person that I duped into joining us, Aaron Walter, head of design way back in the day. He's a super famous, super smart design leader now. I learned a lot about designing with ethics and conscience in mind. He was a really, really thoughtful designer. Gosh, I had a head of engineering in the early days, Chad Morris, who was just, it seemed like he never slept. He was just talk about stoics. He would wake up at 7, program, and be done at 2, and run circles around everybody. He was just disciplined. My first COO, Neil Bainton, he was the one who said, well, do it again. Do it again. He joined, and we went from maybe something like 3 million to, I think he left when we were at 300 million. That guy he was good. I learned from everybody. Too many things. I'd say one time I was talking to somebody, I said, I think I'll start a board, maybe like an advisory board. And they were like, actually, your first step might be that you should get there someday. That's not a bad idea. But the first step is make sure that the circle of leaders you have around you are brave enough to come in and tell you when you're wrong. So just make sure you just foster that atmosphere.
So let's dive into that. How do you actually implement that? Because I think you can tell people, hey, please tell me when I'm wrong. Right? But to actually create the environment and the mechanics, like one of the things that I found is unless you give people, so I've got I'm not a fan of like a yearly performance review or a quarterly performance review. I feel like feedback should come all the time. And so I ask all the managers in our company to once a week meet with their teams, and there should be three things that happen. Tell somebody where they're doing a great job and where they can improve.
Mm.
Ask for where they need more help, support, and resources.
Mm.
And then ask what am I not, where can I get better as a manager, and where can we get better as a company? And so just by creating a consistent mechanic where people know that every week they're going to have an opportunity to give feedback, and not only there's permission to do so, but they're being asked to do so. I'm trying to get to the place where we actually get that. I'm so curious to know from you, like, how do you actually get that executive team of yours to lean in and do that with you and tell you when they feel like you're off, or when you're doing something that's wrong?
I think I do something similar to you. Weekly one-on-ones with every one of them. I still do those. I think it's like the most basic management tool. I still do it in the C-suite. And it's in those one-on-ones. Some of them are just conversational. Yeah, we're talking about goals and all of that stuff, but I think it's the way that you interact with them, and you're willing to kind of listen to them and change your mind. And that just comes over repeated behavior. I'll talk to an executive, and I'll have my idea about how something needs to go. And they might gently sort of suggest another way. And then you got to catch that, and you got to say, wait, are you saying you got to do it you would do it this way, not my way? And you kind of like have to kind of like pull that out of them, and then just keep on doing that same thing. And over time, they get to a point where they just trust you. They trust that you're not going to humiliate them. I guess it's just that your behavior in meetings is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Building trust. I don't know how people do it now over Zoom. That's really hard now.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I'm a big fan of sending physical gifts to folks, just to do something that reminds it of, that we're more than just screens to each other.
Yeah, that's good.
All right. Well, what are you most excited about for the future of Mailchimp? Like you've evolved the business, like you're this incredible SaaS platform for everything small business. I don't think folks understand how hard it is to do what you've done, which is to get to millions of small business customers. And the other insane thing is it's not like, your LegalZoom or ZipRecruiter where you're spending tens of millions of dollars on like TV advertising, or at least historically you didn't, right? So you did it through this really amazing organic growth, probably through a lot of digital marketing, through word of mouth. What do you, as you look at what the business you want to create over the next 3 to 5 years, what are you most excited about, and what does that business look like?
I think about our customers first, how all of their businesses are becoming a lot more global. They are selling things. When I look at like our top customers, they're the ones who sell things that are small and shippable. They're always our top revenue customers. So I think about the future of commerce, the future of small business just being a lot more interconnected and global. I think about our global potential for Mailchimp to serve all of those entrepreneurs all over the world. The majority of our revenue actually comes from outside of the US. And that's not all that deliberate. What happens if we are more deliberate about that?
Mm-hmm.
Can we expand further out? I just sort of think about that. That really gets me. We're also, on the cusp of $1 billion in ARR this year. So I'm like, it's just like, I don't really think about the money and revenue goals that much, but come on, I want to hit that. Mm-hmm. I'm excited about that too. That's a really good kind of a rite of passage for us, I think, and a milestone that I want to celebrate.
Yeah. You must be getting pressure from so many different folks telling you all the time, hey, go public.
Yeah.
Like how do you think about that analysis? Obviously you've already bucked the trend, right? I think it's clear to see like you're building this incredible business. You've got this incredible culture. Like you've just charted your own path. So it's like anything you're doing, keep doing it because it's worked so well for you and the company.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're hearing from so many different people, and every kind of banker everywhere is hitting you up. Hey, this can be a company, with a 50, $100 billion market cap. How do you go through that analysis? How do you think about that for you and the company?
It changes over every 5 years. It changes as I age. In the early years when people were making offers like that, I just thought, but then I'd lose control of everything. I really want to grow it my way. And then maybe, a few years go by and you think about like, but I already have enough. Why do I want more? I want to like grow. I want to do this. I want to take this other path with it, or I don't trust them. And I don't know, as I get further along, I wonder like, what's really good for my customers and my employees? What would be great for them? Maybe my fuel tank is full. What could be good for them? I think about it that way. I've made no decisions, no plans, nothing like that. But it's just sort of like the motivation and the way you frame it just changes. And I was warned about that a long time ago by someone in their 50s. They said, the way you're thinking about it now, Ben, as soon as you hit your mid 40s, it's going to change. Your calculus for life decisions changes around then. So, and they were right.
Yeah. So 2 more questions before we wrap up. And I'm going to stay on this topic for a moment longer because I think, without trying to sound like Dr. Freud here, like you're a pretty exceptional, like psychological profile. I mean, deservedly so. I'm sure you've done very well financially over the last 20 years personally, right? But people who are probably coming by and throwing crazy amounts of money at you for secondary and take the company public. And here you have this incredible asset you've built up. Yeah. Like you're turning down in the short term lots of money personally for you and your co-founder to keep building this asset. Not everyone would do that, Ben. Right? Not everyone would be playing for such a long game. Right? Not everyone would not feel compelled at some point when there's some amount of like personal wealth that they can create to fill the pool there. What's different about you there? Because like the things that come across is like the Zen, the stoicism, the desire to build a great company, the focus on the customer, the understanding of like, hey, I want to still be in control of the destiny where this is going. How do you think about making that trade-off and why you're doing something different than maybe a lot of other people would?
Some people are at those crossroads where they get offered a lot. And they say, wait, maybe I should take the same path that Ben and Dan took with Mailchimp. And when they come to me, I tell them, you better be careful because we had a lot of luck on our side. You're not just going to make it through because you stuck to your guns or you had the grit. A lot of it was timing. And I tell them these offers, they come in waves. It's like a surfer. I know nothing about surfing, but I think you paddle out and you wait for a wave. And if you're lucky, you get a good one. And I say the next one might not come for another 5 to 10 years. So you really better think long and hard about that because it can get lonely in those 5 years that pass. And you just get older. I think for me, I've always wanted to be, self-sufficient. I always said I want to be the author of my own book. And I really, maybe it was sort of that avoiding of the regret that I read about from that hospice nurse, the regret of living your life for someone else. I think that I didn't really have a taste for listening to a lot of investors tell me what to do.
Yeah.
There was a certain time in the early years when we had just a crowd of people who wanted to prove something with Mailchimp. And like we just had this momentum and they had this chip on their shoulder and they were just like, they had this great momentum and this vibe. And I just thought taking investment money right now would ruin everything for these people. So there's a point where it's like not even about you anymore. It's about your people. I don't know. It's all of those things. That's all of the crazy calculus problem in my head when I think about it. Yeah. It's not easy.
All right, last question for us today.
Hmm.
You know, there's so many of us that are trying to achieve what you have in the sense of this incredible customer base, the loyalty that folks have to you, the brand that you've built. I mean, I would say that Mailchimp is really one of the most beloved brands. Like, we're even collecting now consumer data and customer data on Comparably, and your NPS scores are fantastic. And so, you know, a lot of what we all think about and we discuss is how to get there. What I want to know is now that you are there, that you have these millions of customers with this insane brand loyalty that love what you're doing, that obviously will be very vocal, right? If they feel like you are going in the wrong direction or not serving their needs, how do you not F that up? I'm sure that's a big weight and responsibility, you know, for you and Dan. Like, once you get to where you're at, how do you not F it up? Because it's hard to keep that standard of excellence year after year and keep getting better.
You kind of F it up a little bit every day is what it truly honestly feels like. Something is always broken somewhere and you make a mistake somewhere every day, but you just got to keep marching, for one. But I think if you're just constantly looking at the customer, don't listen to your own ego. Don't just think about the customer and build for the customer. That's always been our North Star. And that has always gotten us great ideas. It's pulled us through whenever we've been in a pinch. It's helped us innovate. It's always saved us. Just care about the customer, not yourself. Care about your employees, not yourself. Just look outside.
Well, Ben, thank you for being so generous with your time today, with your counsel, with your, you know, vulnerability. And, you know, you told me that Ink described you as a combination of Mr. Rogers and Batman. And I can actually see that being the case. That's a pretty apt description. And so that's a pretty cool alter ego. And for those of you that, you know, aren't using Mailchimp, go sign up for it. It's amazing. Get your organizations, businesses using it. It's the single best marketing platform, and it's not just for small businesses. Companies of all sizes, I think, are benefiting from it. We're going to have Eric Yuen, the founder of Zoom, as our next guest, so looking forward to having you all join for that as well too. But Ben, I was looking forward to this conversation for a long time. I hope we're going to get to spend more time in person. You were just someone that I've learned today a lot from. And if I could be more like you over the years, and a lot of us, I think we're going to build better businesses, happier teams, have better customers. And so thank you for all you shared today.
You are way too kind. Thank you so much, Jason. This was a lot of fun.
It was, yeah. And I think you got to start selling that poster behind you. A lot of us would buy it. I thought it was custom made for you, but you told me someone bought it for you. I think that should be somewhere on the Mailchimp website that we can all buy. It's a pretty cool poster. I hope you all are doing well. Stay safe, stay sane. Hopefully better days ahead for everyone here as the summer comes. And wishing you all the best. Thank you for keep turning into this leadership lesson series. Thank you, Ben. And we'll be in touch. See you all soon.
Bye, everybody.